Scientists, today we're going to take a closer look at the moon. So put your telescopes on and listen with your whole body. Here we go. Chapter 3 in our book, The Sun, Moon, and Stars. And the chapter 3, it says, what can you observe about the moon? That's the title and the big question that we're asking ourselves. What can you observe or see about the moon? The moon is far away from Earth, but it's our closest neighbor in space. With a telescope, like the one this boy is using here, you can see many details of the moon that you can't see with your own eyes. A telescope makes things look bigger and closer. A telescope is one way you can learn about the moon. The moon's surface. This heading tells us that this section in the chapter is all about the surface of the moon. And I notice these holes. What do you notice about the moon's surface? The moon is a huge rocky ball that circles Earth. The moon has large dents or holes called craters. The craters were made when rocks smashed into the moon. The moon also has high mountains and flat areas. A telescope is one way to help you see the craters, mountains, and flat areas of the moon. A telescope can give a close-up view of the moon. The moon seems to move just like the sun. Like the sun, the moon seems to rise, move across the sky, and set. The moon looks low in the sky. At night, draw where the moon and stars are. Later, stand in the same place, draw the moon and stars again. The moon will appear a little to the west. Here, the moon looks higher in the sky. The moon seems to change. The shape of the moon seems to change. It may look like a banana or a circle. Sometimes you can't see the moon at all, but its shape doesn't actually change. It's always a sphere. A sphere is round like a ball. So you might be wondering why the moon seems to look like all of these different shapes. Let's learn why. It takes the moon about 4 weeks to go through what's known as its phases. During those weeks, the sun shines on different parts of the moon, and we see the shape of the lighted part of the moon, and that's called a phase. So the moon doesn't give off any light of its own. It gets all of its light from the sun. And depending on which part of the moon the sun is shining on, that's why it can look all of these different ways, and these ways are called phases. So the phases of the moon are the new moon, when the moon is dark and you can't really see it, the crescent moon, which is like a banana shape, the first quarter moon, which is a half circle, the gibbous moon, which is almost a full circle but not quite, the full moon, which is a full circle you can see, the gibbous moon again, which is almost a circle, but see how it's this gibbous moon, it was dark on this side, and in this gibbous moon, it's dark on this side. The last quarter moon, so this is another half circle, but again, this part is dark in the first quarter moon, and this part is dark on the last quarter moon, and then the crescent moon, and that's that banana shape again, but it's a banana on the opposite side. And then it starts again. So it takes 28 days for the moon to go through all of its phases, 4 weeks, and then it starts over and it goes back to the new moon. And then it's a crescent moon and the first quarter moon and the gibbous moon and the full moon and the gibbous moon and the last quarter moon and the crescent moon and the new moon, and on it goes. Those are the phases of the moon. The moon is a very interesting body in the sky. Remember that it has dents or holes that we call craters. It also has hills and mountains on the moon. So let's talk about the way the moon moves, the motion of the moon. We know that the moon travels on a path around the Earth. It travels around the Earth in what's called an orbit. We also know that there's a new moon that goes through, and that the moon goes through phases. It goes from the new moon to the full moon every 28 days. We also know that the same side of the moon faces Earth all the time. So some people call the other side of the moon, the side that we don't see from Earth, the dark side of the moon, because we always see the same side that the sun lights up. Here are some characteristics or facts about the moon. First, the moon is the largest, brightest object in our night sky. Remember that it doesn't give off its own light, it gets it from the sun. It doesn't produce its own light. We also know that the moon is lit up by the sun, and different parts are lit up at different times. There's no air on the moon, and it's smaller than Earth is. Let's talk about where the moon is, its location. The moon is our closest neighbor, Earth's closest neighbor. The side that we see is called the near side, and the side we don't see is called the dark side or the far side of the moon. Finally, let's talk about some interesting facts that we know about the moon. We know that the moon is the only place besides Earth that humans have visited in our solar system. Maybe someday we'll get to other places in our solar system, like Mars. That happened in 1969. So the first man to land on the moon was Neil Armstrong in 1969. He landed with his crew of astronauts. So you see, scientists, the moon is a fascinating place. Let me show you what you're going to do today as you continue to study the moon. In your science folder, you're going to take out a sheet, close your book, close the folder, and read the directions. It's all about chapter 3, which we read in our book. Write words in the blanks and draw pictures to show what you know about the moon. The first box said you can observe the moon at night or during the blank. Write the word and draw a picture. The surface of the moon has blank. Write the word, draw a picture. The moon appears in shapes called blank. Write the word, draw a picture. If you want to write more facts about the moon, you can do that. And when you're done, you will cut out your boxes and put them in your science notebook. Make sure to not skip any pages and to number the pages in your science. As always, scientists, make sure to do your very best. And when you're done, put your whole science notebook in your Mrs. Norton folder so I can see your work. Oh, and one last thing, scientists. Remember that you have a wonderful resource in our classroom called Our Learning Resources. And if you ever need to re-look at one of the posters we've made, you can go to that section. So science is under integrated studies, which is section 4. So here's section 1, reading. Section 2, Writing, and Section 3 and 4, Math and Integrated Studies. And so if you flip it over, you can see our poster of the moon, and you can get any help you need or you can go back into the video and you can re-look at it there. So those are two places if you need to remember what we said about the moon.